They thought she was just a quiet farm girl, until the day she snapped. In the middle of the town's farmer's market, 3 boys in shiny varsity jackets strutted up to Naomi Carter's stand like they owned the place. First, it was the taunts. Dirt girl, veggie seller, the usual venom. Then came the shove to her table. In seconds, tomatoes spilled and burst across the pavement like blood, their cruel laughter echoing through the crowd. Can you believe they actually thought she'd just stand there and take it? Everyone expected Naomi to cry, to shrink away. What nobody knew was that her father had left her with a secret gift. Years of martial arts training hidden beneath her quiet farmer's daughter exterior. And if they kept pushing, that quiet farm girl was about to show them just how dangerous silence can be. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The rooster's crow cut through the morning silence as Naomi woke to the rhythm of farm life. Her room was small, plain, but cozy. A quilt her grandmother had stitched, a wooden dresser that creaked with age. She didn't need an alarm clock, her body was tuned to the land. She pulled on her flannel shirt, laced her boots, and moved quietly through the hall so her mother could rest. Outside, the air was sharp and cool, her breath forming clouds as she fed the chickens. "Morning, ladies," she whispered, gathering warm eggs into her basket. "Peaceful, right?" But then, the barn. Under a heavy tarp lay her father's old training mats. The smell of leather and hay still carried his memory. Naomi stretched, hearing his voice echo. "Power comes from discipline, not anger. The oak bends but doesn't break." She moved with fluid precision, every kick slicing the air. Can you imagine? A farm girl practicing deadly martial arts while the rest of town thought she was harmless. By breakfast, her muscles still buzzed from training. Angela, her mother, placed eggs and toast on the table, smiling softly. "Your father would be proud." Naomi smiled back, but inside she knew the truth. Her strength had to stay hidden. For now. The town square buzzed with chatter as Naomi and her mother set up their stand at the farmer's market. Baskets of bright tomatoes, crisp lettuce, and peppers were stacked neatly, every vegetable polished to look its best. Customers drifted by, offering polite smiles to Angela, but most eyes slid past Naomi as if she didn't exist. Some didn't even bother to hide their whispers. Can you believe that? Treated like a shadow in plain daylight. Angela's polite nods and careful posture were her shield, but Naomi noticed the tension in her shoulders. Prejudice was a weight they carried silently every week. Still, they kept arranging produce with steady hands. And then, it happened. A burst of cruel laughter cut through the morning noise. 3 varsity jackets moved through the crowd like sharks in shallow water. Derek Holloway in the lead, his grin dripping arrogance, with Kyle and Mason trailing like hungry dogs. They stopped right at the Carter stand, blocking customers on purpose. "Well, look who it is," Derek announced, his voice loud enough to turn heads. "The dirt girl and her mama's little veggie shack." He let his gaze sweep over the baskets with exaggerated disgust. Naomi's fists tightened, but her mother's shoulder brushed hers in warning. "Stay calm." Kyle leaned on the table until it creaked. "What's wrong, dirt girl? Too good to even look at us?" Mason snickered, his thin face twisted. "Probably thinks she's special, but we all know what she really is." The word dripped with venom, and nearby shoppers looked away. Angela's voice was firm but quiet. "Move along, boys. We're trying to conduct business." But then Derek shoved his hip against the table. A crate of tomatoes tipped, and with one sharp kick, he sent it crashing to the ground. Red pulp splattered across the pavement like blood, staining everything in sight. "Oops," Derek smirked. "Guess they were too ripe." Naomi's hands clenched tighter, every muscle begging for release. Can you believe the crowd just stood there, pretending not to see? And that's when it got worse. Naomi dropped to her knees, gathering the ruined tomatoes with steady hands, though her fingers shook with fury. Juice ran between her palms like blood, each broken piece fueling the fire in her chest. Around her, the crowd pretended to shop, but their sideways glances said it all. Entertainment. Can you believe nobody spoke up? Not one person. Mason stepped closer and spat near her boots, the glob of saliva landing inches from her laces. Kyle howled with laughter, clapping like it was the funniest thing he'd ever seen. Naomi's breath came slow, controlled. her father's voice in her head. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Choose peace until there's no choice left. But then Derek leaned down, smirking so close she could see the reflection of her clenched fists in his sunglasses. "Better clean that up, dirt girl," he sneered. "Wouldn't want the marketplace to look messy." His friends erupted in more laughter, their voices cutting through the market like knives. Shoppers shifted uncomfortably, but no one dared step forward. Naomi stood slowly, straightening to her full height. For a moment, she just looked at them, her eyes steady, her jaw tight. Can you imagine the restraint it took not to strike right there in front of everyone? She could have dropped Derek with a single move. She knew it, and deep down, so did he. Angela's voice was barely a whisper, but sharp enough to slice through the chaos. "Naomi." Just her name, but it carried years of wisdom. Not here. Not now. Naomi lowered her gaze, forcing her fists to unclench. The boys, mistaking her silence for weakness, swaggered off with more cruel laughter echoing behind them. The market slowly returned to normal, though the air still buzzed with gossip. Naomi bent down, gathering the last smashed tomato. Her hands were stained red, but her face was calm. Too calm. Inside, though, a storm was waiting. By the time the sun set on the farm, Naomi's silence was heavier than any words. She pulled on her father's old workout shirt, tied her hair back, and stepped into the barn. That's when it got worse, because this time she didn't train to remember him. She trained for war. Naomi walked home from school, the afternoon sun dipping low, her backpack heavy against her shoulders. For a moment, it almost felt peaceful, until Laya came sprinting from the woods, her face streaked with tears. "They've got my backpack," she gasped. "Derek and the others. They're waiting for you." Cold anger replaced Naomi's calm. "Are you hurt?" "They shoved me around, but they said worse would happen if I didn't bring you." Her voice cracked. "Naomi, they've got weapons." Can you believe that? 3 boys weren't enough. Now they needed weapons. Naomi pressed her backpack into her friend's hands. "Go to my mom. Tell her what's happening." The woods were thick with shadows as Naomi stepped onto the dirt path. She heard them before she saw them, metal scraping against bark, cruel laughter cutting through the still air. Derek twirled a heavy chain like a trophy. Kyle gripped a wooden bat. Mason flicked open a knife, the blade catching the last light of day. "Look who showed up," Derek sneered. "The Karate Kid." Naomi planted her feet, her voice steady. 3 against 1, with weapons. Real brave. They moved in, confident, too confident. Derek swung first, the chain snapping through the air, but Naomi ducked, spun, and drove her elbow straight into his ribs. Kyle charged, swinging the bat high. Naomi pulled Derek into his path. The bat slammed into his friend instead. Can you believe the panic that hit their faces then? Mason lunged with the knife. Naomi's block was sharp, her sweep sharper. He hit the dirt gasping. Kyle tried again, but one twist and a hip throw slammed him flat. Derek roared, flailing with the chain, but Naomi stepped in close, precise strikes to his chest, his knee. His weapon fell uselessly into the leaves. Seconds later, all 3 varsity jackets lay in the mud, groaning, broken, their pride scattered like the tomatoes they once smashed. Naomi stood over them, breathing steady, eyes like fire. "Touch me or my friend again, and I won't hold back." When she walked away, Laya was waiting at the path's edge, eyes wide with relief. Together they stepped into the fading light side by side, stronger than fear. Naomi had fought not just for herself, but for every time silence had been mistaken for weakness. And this time, justice wasn't just served. It was undeniable. If you believe silence should never be mistaken for weakness, hit that like button, share this story, and make sure you're subscribed, because more stories like this are coming.